Jake had been stationed on the research vessel Aurora for 6 months when everything changed and the day started like any other, with routine checks and endless reports, but nothing could prepare him for what was about to happen. The ship had picked up an alien vessel drifting near the asteroid belt, and the crew brought it aboard for investigation. And inside they found her, and she was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, with skin that shimmered like moonlight, and eyes that held galaxies within them, and her name was difficult to pronounce, so she told them to call her. Zira was curious about everything, and she touched every surface and asked questions faster than the translators could keep up, and the science team was thrilled. But Jake found himself both fascinated and overwhelmed by her endless energy, and she seemed particularly interested in him, though he could not understand why. After a long day of tests and observations, Jake retreated to his quarters desperate for a hot shower, and the water was one of the few luxuries on the ship, and he let it wash away the stress of the day, and steam filled the small bathroom as he closed his eyes and relaxed. That was when the door slid open. Jake froze, and his heart hammering, as he saw Zira standing in the doorway, and her large eyes were wide with wonder as she stared at the cascading water, and she stepped inside without hesitation, and her strange clothing already beginning to shimmer and shift. "Wait," and Jake stammered, and grabbing a towel, but Zira was not looking at him, and she was looking at the water, and her hand reached out tentatively, and the droplets seemed to dance around her fingers, and she made a sound that the translator rendered as pure delight. "What is this?" and she asked, and her voice filled with childlike amazement. "It's water," and Jake managed, and clutching the towel around himself, and for showering and cleaning. Zira tilted her head. "And on my world we have nothing like this, and we use sonic vibrations for cleansing, and this," and she gestured to the shower, "and this is beautiful." Jake did not know what to say, and the situation was bizarre beyond words, but Zira seemed completely unaware of any social boundary she might be crossing, and she stepped closer, and the water beginning to splash onto her, and her clothing dissolved like mist, revealing skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Jake averted his eyes. "And you should not be here, and this is private," and Zira repeated the word as if testing it, "and why, and you are simply maintaining your physical form, and this is natural. And is it not?" The translator struggled with the nuances, but Jake understood enough, and on her world there was no shame in the body, and no concept of the privacy humans valued, and she genuinely saw nothing wrong with her presence here. "I understand this is different for you," and Jake said carefully, but humans have certain customs, and we do not share bathing spaces with others, unless we are very close, and Zira moved even nearer, and her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "And are we not close?" and Jake of Earth. "And you have shown me kindness when others were afraid, and you have answered my questions with patience, and you have made me feel welcome in this strange place." Jake felt something shift in his chest, and she was right in a way, and while the rest of the crew treated Zira like a fascinating specimen, he had tried to see her as a person, and apparently that had meant more to her than he realized. The water continued to fall, and Zira reached out and placed her hand on his arm, and her touch was warm and sent a strange tingling sensation through his skin. "And thank you," and she said softly, "and for this moment and for everything." Jake found himself relaxing slightly and he said, "And I appreciate that. But in human culture, this situation is very awkward, and if someone found us like this, there would be trouble. And Zira frowned, "But we have done nothing wrong." "I know," and Jake said, "But it does not matter, and humans are complicated." Zira considered this, and then to his surprise, she stepped back. "And I do not wish to cause you distress," and she said, "And I will learn your customs even if they seem strange to me." She turned to leave and then paused, and Jake and she said, "And on my world, when someone shows you great kindness, we share essence, and it is how we bond." Jake was not sure what that meant, but something in her tone made him ask, "And what does that involve?" Zira smiled, and it was radiant, and a moment of true understanding and of seeing and of being seen. "And I think we just did that." She left then, and the door sliding shut behind her, and Jake stood in the shower for a long moment, and his mind racing, and what had just happened, and the absurdity of it all hit him, and he started to laugh, and the sound echoing off the walls. Later that evening, Jake found Zira in the observation deck, and staring out at the stars, and he approached carefully, and about earlier, And he began. Zira turned, and her expression was peaceful. "And I understand now." And she said, "And your customs are about protecting vulnerability, and about choosing who sees you as you truly are, and it is beautiful in its own way." Jake nodded and relieved, and exactly. And Jake and she continued, "And I want you to know that I see you, and not just your physical form, but who you are inside. And I am grateful." Something warm bloomed in Jake's chest. "And I see you too, Zira." They stood together in comfortable silence and watching the cosmos stretch out before them. And in that moment, Jake realized that connection could bridge any gap. And even between species, and even across the vast emptiness of space. Over the following weeks, Jake and Zira became inseparable, and he taught her about human customs, and she taught him about her people, and the crew noticed, and some with knowing smiles and others with raised eyebrows. But Jake did not care. The Aurora continued its mission in charting new territories and discovering new wonders, but for Jake the greatest discovery had already been made, and it was not a new planet or a new technology, but a simple truth, in that connection and real connection and transcended all boundaries. When the time came for Zira's people to retrieve her, Jake felt a profound sadness, but Zira simply smiled, and the distance between worlds is nothing. And she said, "And not when two souls have truly seen each other." She was right, and Jake knew it, and what had started as an awkward encounter in a shower had become something neither of them expected, and a friendship, and perhaps something more, and that would endure across the stars as Zira's ship departed. Jake watched from the observation deck, and his hand pressed against the glass, and though she was leaving, he knew this was not an ending, and it was a beginning, and of what he could not say, but he knew with absolute certainty that their paths would cross again. The universe was vast, but somehow it felt a little smaller now and a little more full of possibility, and all because a curious alien girl had walked in while he was showering and everything had changed.